Hello, everybody. Welcome back to On the Come Up with KG. And today I have a very special guest, Sir or Javon
Either or.
or what?
Either or.
Oh, I thought you said another name. And I'm gonna go ahead and let you introduce yourself.
As she said, I'm Sir Javon. My government name is Sir, so I have a tendency of introducing myself as just Sir, but uh, I would like to describe myself as just a obsessive opportunist. I've ended up where I am meeting KG just by obsessing over being in different rooms and spaces where I can just be a student, ask questions, and just learn from different people. Hence why we're here today.
Okay, so this is our second time filming this, you guys.
Yes.
Full transparency. We did a whole hour and some change episode, and the sound was spotty the whole time. And we're just praying that is not the case right now. But yeah. And so then also I want to let you guys know how we even know each other. We go to the same church, and Sir co-leads my Connect group with another young woman, and I joined the Connect group. So that's how we know each other. And today we are going to try to focus on, speaking of Connect groups, the importance of community. And so, are you from Dallas?
No, so I grew up in a city called Coppers Cove out by Killeen, Fort Hood, going towards
Oh,
Austin.
really?
Yeah, I grew up out there.
Oh, my one of my very good friends is from Killeen.
Really? It's an
Angelica.
interesting
Her name's
place.
Angelica, yeah. Yeah,
Interesting place.
254.
Yeah, 255.
Okay, and then when did you move to Dallas?
So I moved out in, I want to say 2021. Yeah, 2021.
And so what?
Crazy transition.
What brought you to Dallas?
God, honestly. So, long story short, I graduated high school in 2019. Probably the highest high of my life. I was in a relationship. Was getting ready to go to college. I was going to go to Prairie View for engineering, and everything got flipped on its head. I graduated at 17, so I wasn't able to have a co-signer for the loan that I needed to go. So I decided to stay. God ended up telling me for some reason I needed to break up with my now ex. Broke up with her, and then went right into COVID, and then COVID was insane. Changed everything, you know. My entire plan, what I thought I was gonna do, flipped on its head. I got introduced into the day trading. Really dove into that, but as a result of me diving into that, my entire family, I mean, everybody that I lived with, close friends, all that, were just completely against me. And so ended up in a real vulnerable position until I met somebody who was like, yo, do you want to come to my church? Went to the church with them, had one of the most beautiful days of my life, and the word was dependency on God. So after that point, I was like, yo, I'm gonna just submit everything to you, and whatever you say goes. So like I was saying, the obsessive opportunist, I was just a student. I was listening to different podcasts, different things like that. I was trading the guy that I studied. At the time, he was building a multi-million-dollar mansion out in Plano. The podcast that I listened to, they had just created their headquarters out in downtown Dallas. I have a lot of family out here. And then my friend, I was supposed to be moving in with him. His plans got flipped on its head, and he ended up leaving to go to North Carolina. And I was like, God, what do you want me to do? He was like, look for a job out in Dallas. So I did that. Drove 2.5 hours for a job opportunity, got the job, moved out, and just kept trusting God. Here we are today.
Okay, so a few questions. First question is going back to day trading.
Yeah.
For those who don't know, what is day trading?
So day trading, for what I specifically do, is I'm a currency trader. Some people know it as Forex, which there's a stigma with that because of that time period from like 2020, I want to say, to even 2022, even up until recently. That's how I got into it, being completely transparent. I had a really good friend of mine. She introduced it to me. I got into it, fell into the whole MLM thing. But through that, I realized this is a legitimate skill. Like, you can actually make money from this, not counting the whole MLM side of things. But I was like, you can really make money from this if you sit down and learn the skill. It's just they weren't teaching the skill accordingly. So I outsourced. I came across somebody who taught it phenomenally, who preached the psychology and not making the money. And after listening to maybe 2 or 3 of his videos, I made $400 overnight. So pretty much what Forex really is just the exchange of different currencies. So, we have the pound, the US dollar, all these different countries, they all have their own type of money. They have their own economy, and we are always interacting with one another. And so as the economy does better in different places, the exchange rate changes and so on and so forth. So I make money off of the differences.
Okay, and so from Forex, I know, like you mentioned, it has a really bad stigma, but one thing that I did notice about people who are involved in Forex is Subtracting the whole money making aspect, it seemed like it was more of like a support team or like a support system. And it seemed
Yeah.
like a lot of people who were involved in there had kind of like a mindset
Mm-hmm.
shift
Mm-hmm.
where everyone just seemed so positive and like go-getter mentality.
Yeah.
Even people who are no longer involved,
Mm-hmm.
like people who I've been in contact with, still have that mentality
Mm-hmm.
though. So do you think that's what a lot of it was, like the groups at least were more of like a support based type of thing?
Yeah, honestly, I would say yes. From the people that I was around, it was honestly it was like a family. Like I said, when I got into trading, into forex, like my entire family that I knew didn't support me at all.
And why
You
was
know,
that? That's what was my follow-up question.
so the reason that was is when you grow up, there's a certain mentality from our parents and the generation before that. Like you grow up, you go to school, you don't get in trouble, you get straight A's, you go to college, you become a doctor, engineer, all these different things. Like there's one set way of becoming successful. And so when you don't do that, regardless of what type of kid you are, if you decide not to go to college or don't do this, it's like, what are you doing with your life? Like I'm not, like I'm 17. Like what do you mean?
Yeah.
You know, so it's like, what are you doing with your life? And if you try to take the time to just figure something else out that is not in alignment with what your parents want, it's,
It causes issues.
you know, so
Yeah.
exactly. So that's what it was for me. It was just like, they wanted me to go to college. They're like, well, you need to find a job. And I'm like, well, like, I want to focus on this. And that's what I did. And it was a crazy, like completely on two different agendas,
Yeah.
you know? And, but through that, like, because of the people I was around, they were like, yo, like, keep learning, you know, keep learning, keep learning. And their support system was there, but for me, it was like, yo, like I really see something with this,
Yeah.
and I'm continue to pursue that. So.
Okay, yeah. I think it's kind of interesting how our parents, they kind of envision like what our lives are going to look
Right.
like even in adulthood, and when we become adults and start making our own decisions, they're kind
Right.
of like taken aback.
Right.
They come around eventually, but I think that's just so interesting because
Yeah.
I could kind of see that, like you raising someone and knowing them their whole lives, because you haven't known your parents their whole lives, but
Right.
they've known yours, and they kind of already envision like how your life is going to pan out. So I can kind of understand why that reality would be like
Yeah.
disruptive. But that's interesting.
Yeah, I will say to that, like something that was really interesting that I heard is when you have a child, you're supposed to guide the child and see life through their eyes, not
Yeah.
the other way around.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of times like we try to I want to protect my kid from this and protect my kid from that and only put them towards this or that, and it's like, for one, it never works because children are just curious by nature, so they're gonna fall into it one way instead of like teaching them like right from wrong. But like when you're in it, like think about this, or just the awareness of it all, and allowing them to learn and being there
Yeah.
to just pick them back up as they learn and guide it the right way.
Yeah, and I think also just by nature, there's a certain possessiveness to
Yeah.
being a parent, because it's like you're mine. Like I made you, I created you, I raised you, and so I think it's easy to kind of forget that they are still their own person, and they're gonna make decisions. You can raise them to the best of your ability up for so long, but at a certain point, they're gonna have a mind of their own. And
Right.
but yeah, so we're gonna talk about. So okay, you moved to Dallas, started day trading, found a job, found a church home, and then you started focusing on building community. Is that right, or did I skip something?
So when I would say yes for the most part. I've always been, day trading has been my ultimate goal. It still is. And growing up, there's not a lot of people who are moving the way that I've been moving at my age. And so the people who are around me, like either went to college, went to the military, or out partying, drinking, like whatever, they're in the world, you know, and that's not what I wanted. So my whole philosophy was like, I'm just trusting God, keep my head down and just work. You know, that's what I did for the longest. When I moved out here, I actually wasn't going to church. I was just reading my Bible at home. I wasn't really sure how I felt about the whole church thing until just one day, like I woke up and my granny was like, yo, you need to go find a church. And so by that point, I was like, okay, like I need to invest into community. I wasn't even thinking about community. I just wanted to be around more like-minded men and women that I could really just learn from. And so that's what I really ended up doing first.
Okay, and so at one point, or about how long were you here in Dallas? Because I know that I am somebody who's introverted, and for a long time I convinced myself that I thrive in solitude. So I try to like tell myself that I don't really need anyone. Like I can figure everything out on my own, like me and God against the world.
Right.
But moving into a new city and then already dealing with rejection back home, I'm sure at a certain point you started to feel a little bit of loneliness, right? Or am I?
Yeah, no, I definitely did at times because it's like it sucks when you're sitting here and you're going through certain things and it's like, yo, like I don't know who to talk to. You know, like for me, what I would do is I would do voice memos and I would just like just to get the thoughts out. Like I would just say it, or I would leave and I would go to Fort Worth to go see my little sister. You know, just for that. And so yeah, that's what it really was for me. But it was like that's all I knew. You know, it's like I knew I wasn't afraid to go out and allow God to speak through me because I knew like because of the person that He's given me, like people like me naturally. You know, so I wasn't worried about that. It was just like I didn't see a need to.
Yeah. And so at what point did you realize that there was a level of importance for you to find community?
I would say the moment, the first time I ever went to a group. So right after when I first went to social, something in me just told me to stay. And there was a guy, his name is Jordan Gently. Still remember him to this day. He came up to me, introduced himself to me, and we had a whole conversation. And he invited me out to his Connect group before I even knew about Connect groups. He invited me out to his group, and that was one of the best Connect groups I've been a part of to this day. The guy who led that group, his name is Jeremiah Edgar. He has a group called Two or More, which I was actually at last night. And going there and seeing men, black men at that, but like black men at different age points, career status, like all these different things, shed a title to talk about like real life things that they're dealing with, whether it's divorce, sexual immorality, like issues with their children, spaces in church, work, like whatever it may be, like actually openly talking about these things and seeking for solutions. I was like, yo, like I feel uncomfortable being in this room with all these men, which I'm like, but that uncomfortability is what got me here. I was like, so I need to be here. You know, so I just started pursuing that more and more. And what really set the tone for me is there's another podcast called, what's it called? Black Men Do Talk. There's a guy on there, his name is Street Hymns. I went on the pod once. He has a live audience. So I went up and spoke about something that I was dealing with, these two situations I was dealing with two women from my past. And he convicted me crazy, you know, about something. So I was like, wow, like I need that. And so I just became obsessed with like being in these positions. And then as a result of that, just ended up in these different spaces where I found brothers my age who actually became my brothers. Just, that's really what happened for me.
Okay. And so during this whole time, you moving to Dallas, finding community, what have you learned or what can you share with the audience about the importance of finding brotherhood specifically? Like, yeah, community, but specifically like healthy brotherhood where you have spaces where you're able to have God-centered conversations and also be open and vulnerable as men. Like you said, grown men, young men. Like, how important has that been, and how has that changed the trajectory of your life, or how you deal with things or feelings or expectations for relationships?
I'll say to what you just said, the relationship side of things. What has been so transformative for me is we all deal with sin in different formats of that, especially when we're in the world. And normally when you fall, it's like, yo, like, what am I doing wrong? Like this and that. Like, I don't know, how do I get back to God, this and that. But then when I started having community and brotherhood in these different spaces, it was like, dang, now I have to call my brother and go tell him this. That brotherly conviction, because now for one, it's bigger than just me. And it's like, I just got this community with these different men, and it's like, yo, they've changed my life. They're spitting game to me. They're relating to the things that I'm doing, but then they're speaking life into me to the point to where it's like, they're calling me higher than where I've been. And it's like, I've never been there, and they're seeing something in me that I didn't realize was there myself. You know, the more time I've spent there, the more time I've been around that, the more I've wanted to just surround my entire life with that. And so anytime I've fallen into sin or temptation, whatever it may be, it's like I think of them. It's the first thing that I think of. And then I have to go to them and be like, yo, like this, or yo, that, like. And they're like, dang, bro, like you got to be better. Like we got to be better. Like, yo, we're trying to get to here. We're trying to do this and that. But like we can't get here if you're still struggling here, but then they speak life back into me. That's something that I didn't have. I can't do that for myself if I'm already feeling down on myself.
Yeah.
So that's that outside perspective has been everything. So to the point where now it's like something I've been struggling with for years. As a result of finding community, finding this brotherhood, I've now figured out how to manage accordingly. If that makes sense.
Yeah. And I think, so wait, how old are you, if you don't mind?
22.
Okay, so you're 22, and I think that is interesting and really good to see that there are still young men who are seeking relationships with other men who are going to hold them accountable to do the right thing. Because I think it's one thing to like have brotherhood, because you can have brotherhood,
Right.
but it doesn't mean like, I think it's interesting to see that somebody so young is prioritizing seeking wise counsel, if that makes sense. So
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of people talk about, yeah, I have brotherhood, but it's like, who do you seek counsel from, you know? And if your friends are doing bad things, like,
Right.
you know? So I think that's interesting. And so in those spaces, how does that translate to your relationship with women? Platonically, romantically, like, do they help you kind of check yourself and be like, okay, I can't be lustful for all women, you know, like I gotta seek some type of godly relationship with women as well. Does that help at all?
No, it definitely does. Like, being around the different men, it made me realize, like, even why I said yes to starting the group, well, to leading the group, is because I was like, yo, like, I'm in a space where I don't even know how to have a godly relationship with his daughters. You know, like, I don't know how to do that. So it's like, how do I do that? Like, how do I learn that? And it's like continuing to be in these different spaces. Like, even I was telling you about Dro and Tim, like, yo, they're like, yo, you need to be here. You need to be here. Like, let's go do this. Let's go do that. Where these women are going to be at, you know? So just having that mindset, and then also taking of like, not separating the two. Like, it's like, just because I'm having a conversation with you and I'm having a conversation with him doesn't mean like it's two different conversations. Like, at the end of the day, you're still God's child. I'm still God's child. And that's how I see it. And that's how I'm going to approach it, to where I can just slow down and just ask genuine questions out of curiosity, because I'm trying to learn more. You know, so just because like I'm going to these different men in these different spaces to seek wise counsel doesn't mean I can't do the same thing with the women. You know, I can do the exact same thing. You know, so that's how I started to approach it, because I realized that was my biggest struggle. You know, so that's what I need to start doing. I need to start doing that and seeking that. And to the point to where something I learned recently, how I was just saying, like, I finally learned how to like get past that, is like, I'm in a discipleship, and we had one thing that was like, you have to be spiritually motivated and not emotionally attached. And the difference between the two is, when you're spiritually motivated, that means you're just focused on one thing. You know, something that's been a heavy topic of conversation lately has been, in order to run the race of endurance, when it comes to resisting sin, you have to shed, or resisting temptation, you have to shed every weight and every sin. You know, you have to, for one, give yourself grace. And then for two, in order to put on the full armor of God, you have to make a decision to do that.
Yeah.
You know, when you're spiritually motivated, like, I'm going to constantly pursue God. I'm willing to shed blood. I believe that's a scripture too. You've yet to shed blood when it comes to resisting temptation and sin. Like, you have to intentionally be willing to shed blood to, like, I'm going to die on this. I'm willing to die if it means resisting this. You know, my brothers tell me to understand that. My brothers tell me to understand, like, yo, like, I need to make a decision actively every single day. Like, this is what I'm pursuing. Like, I need to stay spiritually motivated in this. And so when I'm in these spaces, when I'm leading this group, like, that's how I approach it. Like, the same way my brother spoke life into me because they see me up here, the same way that Jesus spoke to us because he sees us up here. Same way I approach the women. It's like, yo, like, I can have a conversation with you and I see the light coming out of you. I see how comfortable you are with this pod. Like, I see these things, and I'm going to speak to that. Not because out of like attraction or whatever it may be, like, or out of a lustful reason like it was before. That's not the case anymore. Like, we're trying to move past that. You know, we're trying to be more wise. You know, like, that's what we're learning in these spaces around these wise men and women. You know, so that's what I'm going to start to pursue. That's because I'm being spiritually motivated. You know, so that's how I'm trying to move now. That's how I'm trying to just walk that out, you know, and pray that at the end of the day, I'm just a vessel. We're just vessels that God's choosing to pour out of. You know, when we have that mindset, it's like, yo, like, I'm going to be there for my brother and my sister in Christ just as Jesus was there for me. You know, so that's how I try to pursue it, especially when it comes to women. And that's been the biggest difference for me as of lately.
Yeah.
So,
And so would you say that that's that it's unnatural. Like it's something that you've had to constantly work to accomplish. Because I feel like, for an example, I feel like on my end, like a lot of the times when I'm talking to men, my first initial thought isn't like, it's just, I'm having a conversation with another person. That's it. And then maybe, who knows, if that conversation progresses, I might be like, okay, I'm attracted to the way that this person thinks, or X, Y, and Z. That's how my mind operates. But I'm not a man, so I don't know how the male mind operates. Do you have to kind of like decode that initial lust and learn to not do that? Or do you feel like it's something that can come more naturally?
No, I would definitely say that, because it's like there's a difference between attraction and lust. Like we're naturally going to be attracted to things that we're attracted to. Like that's just natural. Like if I see a beautiful woman, it's like, wow, that's a beautiful woman. But it like the moment, what do they call it? A long look. Like the moment it starts to transition into that is like when you have to check yourself.
Yeah.
You know, so honestly, I would say like that. And it's like, it's always going to be there, you know, but it's like I'm making an active decision to not do that. You know, so like it's like when it comes in, like different people say anything, like different things. It's like I rebuke that, I plead the blood of Jesus, like whatever you want to like say. Like it's like the thoughts are definitely still there, but it's like I'm aware of that. I know I'm weak in that, but I'm leaning on God's will, not mine. Okay. You know, and because of that, I'm going to approach this. I'm choosing to approach this differently. Okay. But it's an active choice.
And yeah, so with the lack of discipline, do you think that it's nearly impossible?
With the lack of discipline?
Yeah, with the lack of with the lack of discipline, it's nearly impossible for men to be just friends, or at least like, you can be just friends with somebody because it has to be consensual. Like if I'm saying I'm your friend, and you're gonna, but I mean, like in your mind, there's no hope that eventually it will transpire into something different with somebody that you're attracted to. Because I feel like if you're not attracted to the woman, of course you're okay with just being friends with her. But with lack of discipline, do you think that's nearly impossible? Because I feel like a lot of men don't put forth the work to have that discipline. Because a lot of men just are like, that's my nature, you know? But a lot of men don't put forth work to have that discipline. So with the lack of discipline, do you feel like it's nearly impossible for men to be just friends with women that they find attractive?
That's tough. I want to say yes. I want to say yes.
We might stir up some controversy.
Yeah,
like, they might be beating us up in the comments, but
I want to say yes because that makes sense. Because it's every guy is different in how they approach that. You know, some men are just attracted to a woman and they're going to pursue that specifically just out of like pure attraction, like physical attraction. Other men, they can be attracted to that, but it's like that's just surface, and I want to learn more about you before that. You know, so it's hard to say, but I would say out of a lack of discipline, meaning they're struggling with something and that requires discipline.
They're choosing to not discipline themselves in that specific area, you know?
Yeah, then I would say I would agree. I feel like it is.
Because I feel like even with me, I think that I tend to have more guy friendships, and this doesn't happen in all of my relationships with my guy friends, but in some of them it's like you can just get the vibe that if the opportunity presented itself they will go, you know what I mean? Or they're waiting for the opportunity, or they say little things that's like, you shouldn't say that to me as a friend, you know? And I've had some of my guy friends be like, no, it's impossible for you to just be like, this is my platonic friend to somebody that you find attractive. Like you're always going to just kind of like wait on that moment, or they're probably pretending to be your friend. Like they're playing the long game. Yeah. And for lack of better words, like most of the time it's like they're playing the long game. And that's just so crazy to me because I'm like, I don't think like that, you know, like I don't think like that. Yeah. I feel like if I like somebody, like I can't really, I'm not going to just pretend that I don't like you and be like, oh, maybe one day they'll see me differently. Men are built different.
Yeah, and here's my thing against men is what are you working towards? Like, what is your purpose? What are you passionate about? Like, because there should not be a reason where you're obsessing over the potential idea of being with a friend of yours.
Yeah,
as a guy, like like, even if you have attractive female friends, like, that's cool, but that shouldn't be your whole world.
Right.
Like, you should be working towards something to where that's not at the top of your mind. Like, that shouldn't be there. Like, I have attractive female friends, but like, that's not number one on my mind. Like, it's like, I'm focused on this. This is what I'm working towards. So I would say, as to you, that would be something to pay attention to. Like, for these guy friends that you have, it's like, what are they doing in their life? Like, what are you really doing? What are you actually working towards? And if they're not working towards anything where you're like, all they're doing, they're just waiting on a text for you, then like, okay, maybe they are, and that should be a red flag, because like, us as men, we're meant to be doing something.
Proactive, yeah.
Like, we're meant to be doing something, actively working towards something. If we're not, there's something wrong with that. I can say this is something that's been interesting to me, just like not off, but on topic, is something I was talking to my fellows about at the group the other night, is what it's like to, and I'm curious for y'all as well, like, when you, or at least for us, when we come into contact with a godly woman, the level of conviction with that is just different.
Oh, okay.
It's very, very, very different, to the point to where it's like, yo, like, we need to
I need to
come a little
tighten
bit
up.
more correct, like, we gotta stand up a little
Yeah.
bit, like, come a little bit more correct, especially if you meet a beautiful godly woman at that. The level of conviction is different, to the point to where, like, if the man isn't in the right space, he's gonna shy away from that by nature and almost settle. Well, I don't want to use settle because that sounds crazy, but like, would rather pursue something that's gonna be a little bit easier, something that's a little bit more on their level, And I was telling my brother, I was like, yo, like, even in these spaces that we're in, when it comes to being around these godly men, it's like, you have to learn what a godly woman looks like what a true godly woman looks like, because there are a lot of women and men both who are in these spaces that aren't actually godly women or godly men. So when you're in it, you got to learn, because it's like, it's almost worse now in the Christian space compared to when we were just in the world. Because like, when you're in the world, like, everybody's off.
Yeah.
But like, when you're
in the space, it's like people are cosplaying. Like,
Exactly.
like, you don't know what's really going on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you can get lost in that so easily.
Yeah.
Like, so quick. It's like, well, she's a Christian, she's reading her Bible and this and that. But like, are you actually bearing fruit?
I was about to say,
are you
what
really
fruit are
bearing
you
the fruit?
Yeah.
So like, that's why it's so important to like be in these spaces to learn what godly women look like. Like, even before leading up to leading this group, like, I was asking a lot of different women, and like, one of them, dang, I forget her name, but something she told me was so powerful. She was like, a lot of times we come into the spaces, like, they'll meet in the middle with men, and the men will come in with a preconceived notion of what a feminine or a godly woman looks like, instead of allowing the women to describe to them what that looks like, and then taking that back to God, or going back to the scriptures with it. For us, like, we have to be so proactive in doing that and be intentional about like seeking out godly women, because I'm telling you that conviction is different. Or like, and I don't know, I'm not a woman, but like, I would hope and pray that it's the same when you meet a godly man. Like, the conviction is different. Like, yo, we gotta
tighten up. Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, I think it's definitely the same, but also, I feel like you said, it's so hard to decipher, like, is this real or is it not? Because I know, like, in my friendships, I have friends who also are like, oh yeah, I'm a Christian, I do this, I do that. But then there's friends who I actually, like, I can see the fruit that they're bearing. Like, I can recognize, oh, so-and-so's been a lot more patient lately,
Fruits of the Spirit.
Or this person has been a lot more, So I don't know. I think it definitely is convicting. Like, when you meet, you're like, okay. And I can see what you mean by you start feeling insecure. Like, okay, I'm not there yet. I need to do a little better. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and I would say for me, it's like, I get excited about that, because it's like, I see myself as a kid. I see myself as a student. There's always something to learn. Perspective is everything. So if I meet a woman who's like convicting me to the point where like I feel uncomfortable, it's like, yo, like, I want to attract a woman who's like that. Not her specifically, but I want to attract more women that are like that. I want to be in more spaces where that's welcome, where these type of women are going to be at. So like, what do I need to do to be in that space where those type of women are at? Okay. That's how I see it. So it's like, okay, I need to make sure I'm in my word. I need to make sure I'm just being a student more, like just learning, pursuing, growing, being in community around other godly men, because these type of godly men are with these type of godly women. Yeah. It's all very intentional. So that's what I'm seeking out. And like you said, I guess the discipline in that to just pursue that, but as a student, I'm coming out as a student, not to pursue anything. It's just like,
Right,
I
right.
just desire to learn.
So, as you mentioned, coming into spaces and allowing women to teach men what godly women are supposed to look like. As you're learning and growing and being a student in these spaces, what does a godly man look like to you? Or if you can envision the man you want to be, what does that entail? Like what characteristics, what does that look like?
The type of man that I want to be, able to, what is it? It's in the Bible. It's like slow to speak, slow to anger, quick to listen. There's another one in there somewhere. But like, it is walking out purpose. You know, like I'm fully submitted to my purpose. I'm fully submitted to like allowing God to speak through me. I'm pursuing whatever He's put in front of me. Like for me, I was talking to a friend of mine this morning, and I was like, "Yo, like, we have to understand why it is we're chasing after these things, the things that He's placed on our hearts. Why we're so ambitious. Like, for what reason? Like, how is that gonna pursue or glorify your purpose? Which our ultimate purpose is to create disciples and all that stuff like that. So it's like for me, the reason why I want to be a successful day trader is because I'll be in a position to give back to the people who have helped me get to where I am today. You know, there's been a lot of people up from just small conversations to spaces like this where I was just able to be a student who've helped me, who've convicted me, like to be in a position to give back to those people, you know, and be like, yo, this was God. Like the only reason I'm here is because of that. So I feel like a godly man is honestly that he's able to control his emotions phenomenally. You know, he's able to see past like the temporary loss. Just the people who are in front of him are just lost. He can see past as like, no, like I see you as this. Like I see you. You know, and it's like I understand that you're lost right now, but that's okay. I'm gonna consistently be here. I'm gonna consistently support you. He knows how to speak to people like that. He knows how to soften his voice to make people feel comfortable. You know, but at the same time, like to have a call to action to him. You know, even all the fruits of the spirit, like what is it? Joy, patience, peace, kindness, goodness, gentleness, like all of those, love, self control, especially.
Yeah.
Like all those, and he's able to just call people to action. He's able to help people like get to the next level. Like that's something I'm trying to walk out and just move in. Like honestly, that's what I see for for myself as of so far.
Yeah, I just asked because I think this conversation is important just for not just women, but young men as well. I think that culture has influenced us to think
Without a
that.
doubt.
I'm sorry?
No, I was just saying without a doubt. Like
Okay, yeah.
yeah.
Sorry. No. Culture has influenced us that like people, especially young men around your age, like this don't exist.
Yeah.
And it's obviously not the norm. And I just don't want people to settle because there are people who are working. There's people who are young men, especially who are actively seeking relationship with God. And again, not just young women, but men as well. I know there's probably a lot of young men, like you had mentioned before, that you feel like a lot of people you were hanging around with just weren't on the same mission as you. I feel like there's a lot of young men like that too, that they feel like they want to be on this mission to like seek God and have a closer relationship, but culture teaches us like that's not manly. That's not what men are supposed to be doing.
That's a conversation.
Yeah,
So,
that's exactly like what does even define masculinity these days?
Yeah.
Like there's so many conversations about
So
what
many
being
conversations.
masculine is,
Right.
and it's like, I mean, I can share my perspective. Let's go with your perspective first, because you're a man, I'm not. But you can share what your definition of masculinity is in a godly way.
that's tough to say. Like, well, coming off of what I just said, to follow up to that, like, yeah, honestly, I would just have to second like what I was saying just now.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like the
Just taking initiative.
yeah, it's a lot of intentionality.
Yeah.
Like, you have to be very, very, very intentional and actively willing to like move, to go out and figure it out. You know, but while being able to manage your own emotions, like one thing, I don't know, it's hard for me to say with masculinity because I feel like this is so for everybody. Like one thing I always say is like, we have to be at peace. You can't push things to the side. Like you have to make sure you're seeking peace from everything that we've been through. A lot of times, like how you're saying, like this definition of be a man and what
Right.
masculinity looks like comes from generations before us because of their own hurt and things that they went through. Like us as of now, like we have to be intentional about like, no, like that's not right. I know it's not right. Now, there may be some truth in it, but like there's a lot of pain in
Yeah.
that. And so as far as going forward, I want to make sure I'm at peace with everything from the past. I want to make sure I've forgiven everybody from the past who have hurt me. You know, I need to make sure I'm good with that before stepping forward, because if you're not going to be able to have a successful relationship if you're not at peace with
Yeah.
anybody, especially romantically. If you're having a wife, like a lot of people get divorced
Yeah.
over stuff like that because they're not good themselves. They're not at peace with what they're doing as an individual. You know, a lot of that stems from hurt from the past.
Yeah.
You know, so for me, I'm still actively learning myself. You know, like 22 out here. You know, so like I'm still trying to figure it out. But what I will say, as far as starting, especially to all the men who are listening, like if you want to start somewhere, seek peace. You know, one of the hardest things to do is just to forgive yourself for the things that you've been through. And the moment you do that, or you're able to get to that point, then you can actually start forgiving the people who have hurt you, and you can really start to find peace. And the moment you start to find peace is when you're able to really just start to progress and just be free from all of that.
Yeah. So, in shorter words, heal.
In a sense,
Go to
yes.
therapy. I'm just
Right.
kidding. Seek God.
definitely. Yeah.
No, but I think that's interesting because I feel like like I mentioned, there's so many conversations surrounding what being masculine and feminine is, and I think culture has just like distorted the definitions to fit their narrative. Like one thing that's very interesting to me is this whole talk about like being a, what is it, soft girl era? Soft girl, soft girl era, passenger princess. And it's
Passenger
like,
Princess is hilarious.
and it's like, and then you got everybody calling all the men sassy. Like it's so much
Bro.
going on, and it's just so interesting to me because I feel like, honestly, just stepping back and evaluating, and also like you mentioned, learning myself, is really realizing that all of it is just spiritual warfare. Like we're trying to figure out what's masculine, what's feminine. We already know what it is. It's just everyone's picking out the pieces that they want and then adding it to this and then subtracting this, and you know, like trying to create their own definitions. And also like society has changed. So it's like the women want to be independent,
Right.
but they also want to be taken care of. But they also don't want to nurture. They also don't want to be soft. But they want a man to be soft, but they also want him to be tough. But then they also want him to pay the bills. But then he can't tell them what to do. like, like, you know what I'm saying? It's like, okay, what are we doing here? Like, what's going on? So, like I said, and then you have all these alpha male, beta male, soft, feminine, like,
Right.
y'all, please, let's get it together. But it's just like, so I grew up in a pretty traditional household. Like my dad worked. I have 10 siblings. I think I've said this on here before. I had 10 siblings, lived in a household with a total of 7 of us at a time. And my dad was a sole provider. My mom did not work. And my dad did like little to no complaining. He just made sure that everything was taken care of. And I remember I had a conversation with my dad before, and I asked him just randomly, like, what is your definition of being a man? And short and simple, he said, a man takes care of his family by any means possible. That's all he said.
I agree.
You know, like sweet and simple. I take care of my family, you know, and like I said, he doesn't complain. He works 7 days a week. And so my expectation for men is not necessarily just that, because clearly, like, I have a lot of things that I like to do. So I think regardless, I'm always going to be like working and doing stuff and pursuing my own thing. But short and simple, take care of your family under any means possible. And that comes, like you said, being able to control your emotions, being able to have purpose, have ambition, lead, you know? And I think it's just like, it's just so much. I think so many people are just influenced by social media. And it sucks to say, but especially Black people, we don't have a lot of
outlets.
Yeah, we don't have a lot of outlets, and we don't have a lot of household examples. Like a lot of people didn't grow up in, Black people especially, didn't grow up in 2-parent households. So they don't know what the men and woman dynamic looks like or what they should be expecting. They just know absence. And because of that, they kind of conjure up what they think that they wish that they had based off of what they see. So I think, like, for me, like I said, I was blessed to actually have an example of what I think like real masculine leadership looks like. To an extent, like, you know, give and take, but you know, and also make a decision of what I feel like feminine leadership looks like, because it's not like my mom really ran stuff in the house, like, you know, like she was the one who ran things for real, but she also made sure like we ate, she made sure we got to school, you know what I mean, like everyone has a role to play. But
I will say this too, because I have to make sure I say this. When we say control your emotions as a man, because I fully agree with what your dad said, like we're supposed to provide by any means necessary for your family. Yes. Like I said, I want to be in a position to give back to those who have helped me by any means necessary. Like I got to make sure I get there by any means necessary. So like with that, controlling your emotions is not ignoring your emotions. You know, like there's another saying that's like majority of people in the world, like when they get emotional, they allow their emotions to govern and dictate what they do instead of taking the time to understand what their emotions are, where it comes from, and why they're feeling that way, and then going forward from there. You know, as men, we have to be very intentional with that because we go through a lot. You know, especially like, even though yes, we're trying to change their narrative of like be a man and all that stuff, we're still in that world of being a man. Like we're still dealing with all these different things.
Yeah,
like there's a lot of things. There's a lot of pain.
a lot of pressure as well.
Exactly. Like it's still there. So like emotion's gonna come, hurt's gonna come, pain's gonna come. Like, but you have to be diligent in understanding like, okay, like I'm not okay for one. Like as men, it's okay to not be okay.
Yeah.
Like that's number one. But number two is like, how are we gonna get past this? You know, for me, I have God. Like I'm telling you, like
And
there was a
community.
time, you know, exactly. There was a time, I was just saying it earlier, like there was a time I did not have, my entire family was against me. I didn't have that. And for me, it was dependency on God, like praying every night, tears, bawling at, like I've been there, you know, pouring my heart out to God and he filled me back up. That's what it's been for me. And I can't speak for everybody else, but that's what my experience has been. And it's blessed me to the point to where like I've found community. I've found people like KG. I've been in these different spaces now to where it's like, yo, not only do I have God to go to, but I can also call my brother. I can call my sister. I can call these different people who share the same boat that I've been in and who can speak life into me. You know, that's something that has helped me to, as far as managing my emotions. So like, I want to be very specific in saying that like, yes, as men, we are meant to provide. We're meant to support our family by any means necessary for the people around us. That's true. And you do that through self-control, but like, make sure you're managing your emotions very, very well. That's why I said like, seek peace. You know, like start there. If you want to start somewhere, seek peace.
Yeah. And also I want to say for women as well, I think that we oftentimes give women a hall pass to be emotionally distraught and irrational. And I think that as humans across the board, we have every right to be emotional. We're emotional beings. It's inevitable. But I think that we do have to take some accountability of controlling our emotions and regulating it. And also damage control. Like we have to, I think that we, like I said, we just have to take accountability. I know a lot of times people say that men or women mature faster than men, right? I want to say I don't think that that's true, only because, like I said, women get a hall pass for being emotionally distraught. Like a woman, it's more acceptable for a woman to get super emotional and destroy everything and hit you. And okay, she's emotional, she's a woman, she has hormones, that's excusable. But if a man gets upset and starts destroying things, we're calling the police. Like that's not okay. You need to get that under control. It's scary, right? And I don't think either or, as an adult, as someone who's supposed to be like growing and learning, that's acceptable. Like I think that we need to as women take accountability and be like, okay, I need to really check myself, because emotions are fickle. They change. Feelings are not fact. It's not fact. It is, feelings are, what's the word I'm looking for? Feelings are justified. You're justified in feeling how you feel when you feel it, because sometimes you can't control how we feel about certain situations, but what you do with that feeling, you are responsible for. So I think, across the board, not just for men, but for women as well, we need to start taking responsibility of how we control and handle our emotions.
And a lot of that stems from like not knowing how to properly express or have conversations. You know, something, I remember I was reading a book, what is it called? How to Win Friends and Influence People. In that book, they talk about how something as simple as switching how you apologize to people. So like if you do something to me that wrongs me and I hurt you, it's like, well, like I did this to you and I'm sorry, but you did this to me and that's
Yeah.
why I did that, versus like I did this to you and all that, but at the end of the day I still did this to you and I'm sorry for that. Something as simple as just flipping the two
Yeah.
changes so much, from making somebody feel defensive to making them feel open. To be like, dang, like, no, you're right. You know, like, how are we getting to the end?
Yeah.
You know, so that's why it's so important for us to like just slow down and just learn how to have it. How do I say it? Like, that's why it's so important for us to slow down and have these conversations and create spaces where it's okay to not be okay, and
Yeah.
for you to express that. That's why I was saying earlier, like a godly man is gonna see past that. And it's like, yo, like I know that you're going through a lot and I know that emotions are temporary, but that's okay. When
Yeah.
you're ready, I'm here.
Right.
You know?
And that's what I always say too. I'm like, your emotions and your feelings are valid. Don't get me wrong. I don't want you to think like, oh, I'm feeling like this. It doesn't matter. That's not true. Your feelings are valid. They're just fickle. They're just you can be the happiest person today and super sad tomorrow. You know, so don't be slow to react. I guess.
So coming off of you, you know, I've always been curious to just sit down and talk to more women and ask them like, what does a feminine woman look like to you from your experience? What has that been like in comparison to in the world, to, you know, being a Christian, being in God's daughter? How do the two compare and how do you define that?
I think ultimately, this is good. I already know this is gonna like. I'm trying to mentally prepare for the backlash. I think that it's ultimately accepting relinquishing control and allowing a man to lead and guide. And I know y'all hate to hear it, but I don't think that women were built to carry the type of weight that we do. And if you allow the right type of person to come in who wants to take that weight off of you, you should do it. And I think that we should go back to the roots of like, so you think about it like, before women were working, I think feminism has ruined a lot of things. Dang, I'm so scared. But like, why are we accepting the idea that being naked and provocative and what's the word I'm looking for? Like shitting on men is what gives us our power back.
Yeah.
You know, like I think that is the complete opposite. Like I think women are really, we were made to be like dainty, and we do have a lot of roles, but I think naturally we're nurturers. We're supposed to be soft. We're supposed to be healing. We're supposed to create soft and safe spaces. That's what being feminine is to me. And I don't think that there is like, a lot of women think that it's necessary for us to have a certain level of aggressiveness because we're always so like overlooked and stepped over, which I completely understand. But I feel like honestly, having that softness to you is the ultimate superpower. Like I feel like there's something like when a soft feminine woman walks into the room, it's undeniable. Yes. Like you don't have to be loud, you don't have to be abrasive, you don't have to be aggressive. You don't have to demand anything. I think your aura as a genuine feminine woman like demands respect. It demands order. It like commands the room. But I think we've allowed like just hurt, heartbreak, experiences make us think that being feminine and being soft and being submissive and allowing others to lead, at least in a more like front forward way. I feel like women are the real leaders, honestly, but like, you know, in a more front forward way, that's how we have our superpower. Like we've been manipulated into thinking, or like life has just convinced us that that is a negative thing to be, like soft and walked over, but it's not. It's the complete opposite. Yeah, I think that's just what being like a feminine woman is. It's just like you have to be willing to relinquish control. I think we just
I
want,
think that's an interesting choice of words.
yeah.
So I will say this from my experience, like there's a specific woman in my life who is, I believe, is naturally feminine, and just from being around her, her softness and walking that out allowed me to like slow down and shed that kind of like, be a man type of thing, to the point where she was able to reach me in a way that like other men can't reach me. To the point, she was the one who made me realize like, like I need to start being more vulnerable. Like I need to slow down. Like she was the one who made me understand those things, and so to follow up to what you're saying, my question is, because I truly believe women can still be all of that, but still have a voice, still have a platform to do all these different things, to achieve all these different things. Because like even you have a podcast, like, which is phenomenal.
Yeah.
So like when it comes to having the ambition that you have, how does that, I guess, because I feel like the reason why women would push back against that is because they feel like they lose their ability to like create and decide, and lose that creativity. So how have you been able to maintain that ideology, that mindset, while having something like this podcast and doing all the other different things that you do?
I think that being soft and submissive doesn't equate to just shutting up. Those are not synonymous to me.
Yeah.
Like that's not the same thing.
Okay.
I think if I'm going to first of all, I'm going to submit to somebody that I respect. I'm not going to just listen to anybody and be like, okay, like being submissive, that's, being submitted to is a privilege, right? So you obviously are going to take account of who you're being submissive. Like if I don't feel like like you're worth listening to, or like I trust your opinion, or I trust your counsel, like you're not in my life in general, like who are you?
Right, exactly, no.
But it doesn't equate, and I don't think that I would allow somebody in my life, friendship, who their definition of being masculine is telling me to shut up, or me being submissive is you be quiet. It's just like taking a load off of me that I don't think that as a woman I need to carry, and certain things are just like, it's not my load to carry. Like, there's a reason that men are physically more tough than women. You know what I mean? Like we're just not meant to carry certain things. And I think that we hold on to that because we're scared. But it's like, no, it's not mine. The same way that we're like, certain loads are for God to carry. It's not for us. We're not strong enough for it. It's not mine. You have to submit that to him. And I feel like we know that that's God's, well, at least in my opinion, that's God's position for men on earth for women. You submit that to him and he submits that to God, because he's the head of the household. He's the, that's leadership. It doesn't equate to me being quiet and me not doing what I want to do. But it's just having a certain level of authority or wise counsel, or someone who I think is just more mentally, or should be more mentally and physically fit to carry certain loads that I know that I am not meant to carry.
Right. I agree with that, because authority looks different in different spaces.
Yeah.
Like how you were saying earlier, your mom had authority over everything in the house with y'all. Like that, and the father would, almost submit to that. Like there's certain ways like your woman, your wife, as a godly woman, you're going to have authority over your man in certain ways.
Yeah.
Same way, vice versa. So like
in your household and your kids, I think people just hear the words like submit and they think, oh, I can't do anything. I have no rights. He's taking everything from me. But like I said, I think submission is just like, there are certain things that a man, I think is just physically and mentally fit to handle that I don't think that I am. And just relinquishing that control and giving it to him. Like, here, you got it.
I feel that. And even like, to double back, like just to fully say this as well, like even for me, one of the most attractive things with women, especially godly women, is like when they actually have something that they're like genuinely just obsessed with, like especially when it's creative, when that natural, it just comes out like, yo, like really enjoying doing this. Like I have a friend, she's really into art right now. I'm like, yo, like this is really dope. Like you're creating art.
Eyes light up.
Exactly. Like that warmth that just, you can just feel the warmth in that. I love that. You know, I feel like when women hear like the submissiveness, they feel like they have to lose that. And I'm like,
Yeah,
that's not the
no.
case. Like, remember what I was saying earlier, like the only way you can have a successful relationship is if you and your partner are at peace with yourselves as individuals first. Like, you got to be at peace with yourself, meaning like what you're walking out, what you're doing in your own life, even if this man wasn't here. You know, like that's attractive to me, seeing you at peace with those things, seeing
Right.
you happy with what you're doing in your own life as a individual. You know, so like that's why I love going and talking to different women and asking like, well, how do you define femininity? Because it's like with that, like, do you feel like you have to lose, or I feel like some women feel like they have to lose that their creativity, what they're ambitious about, like what makes them happy because they have to submit to another man what makes them happy. And like, no, that's not the case. It's like, yo, like I talk to me and my friends all the time. We're like, no, like we want our women to have the option if they want to just stay home, they have it there.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, like but they don't have to.
Yeah.
You know, it's like I love when I guess I'm gonna keep saying like I just love an ambitious woman that's like working towards something. It doesn't have to be like a full on business. It's like whatever she's choosing to do, she's happy and content with that. You know, so
Yeah, I think it's like if you're with somebody and their definition of like being masculine or having authority is to take away things from you that make you happy,
Right.
that's not right. Like when you think about being submissive, it should make you, it should be like, thank God I finally have somebody who can like
Yeah.
take this off of me. It shouldn't be like, oh no, I have to give up this. I can't do this. I can't do that. That's not what it is. It's just like, it's like the way that we see having a relationship with God, right? It's like, oh, now I can't do this. Now I can't do that. Now I'm a Christian. I can't do this. No, thank God I have all this weight that I can
Right.
give to somebody else because it's too heavy for me,
Right.
you know?
Yeah, and with that, it's like when Jesus was here, he saw them for something that they didn't see themselves as. You know, like when you're around godly men and godly women, that's how they choose to see people. That's how they choose to see the addict, the one who's addicted, whatever
Exactly,
it may be. Like
yeah.
they see them as something way higher than that. It's like, no, like I see you past this. I see the good in you. I see the peace, the nurture. Like I see all these different things in you. You know, so it's like I'm choosing to pursue that. And so it's like my wife, I expect her to see the same thing in me. You know, to see like, dang, like I'm beating myself up because of this and that. It's like, no, like let me remind you in a soft voice because like that's how I've been reached in my past. And the same thing, like as men, like we're with our own women. It's like, yo, like when they're feeling those different emotions, like yo, like let me remind you of who I believe you to be. You know, like they're not synonymous from each other. Like they're the same
Yeah.
thing. You know, like staying there. I think that's another issue. Like not to get too far off topic, but like we live in a world where it's everything is categorized.
Yeah.
Every little thing, like even there's masculine and feminine. Now it's like, are you an alpha or a beta?
Yeah.
This and that.
It's
and
more
are you,
specific than
you know,
so,
like
yeah.
it's more and more and more and more. But like when we get back to the basics, it's like, yo, like we're not that different from one another.
And I think also it's like everybody wants what everybody has. I think God created men and women separately because we all have roles to play and you have to be okay with playing your role. I think that's what it is. Like women want to be more like men. Some men want to be more like women.
Yeah. Well, I will say something that has been a topic of conversation with my other brothers and our own curiosity when it comes to godly women's spaces. Are y'all having the same conversations where it's like us as men, we're convicted by godly women and we're trying to understand what a godly woman looks like so that we can adjust accordingly, you know, as godly men, you know, and learn from that. So like our question is like, are women having similar conversations or even if the conversation is different, but like actively trying to get to the same place?
Yeah, I think that it is, but honestly, in my like smaller circle, I don't think that, if I'm being completely honest, men aren't a topic of conversation.
Really?
Yeah, just where I am in my life right now, and I think also with like my friends, we might talk about it very briefly, but most of it is like self-work because I think I'm fairly new to like coming back to faith and like being more serious about it. So I'm working on a lot of internal things, and I think men are kind of like an afterthought for me right now. But I know eventually that's going to be like important if I want to get married and stuff like that. But I just feel like there's a lot of stuff that I need to work out. So I don't think I have like a good enough answer right now. But I'm sure that is like obviously, you know, a thing. But I think when I do, even as I'm like working on it, when I do run into godly men, like you mentioned before, it is a little bit convicting, and like it just inspires me to like want to be better ultimately. But yeah, in like my core conversations with like my friends, we don't really talk a lot about men these days.
I feel you. Like I said, for us, well, I think, at least for my group, like since we're in spaces where these different women are at and like our own issues that we struggle with, like it comes up a little bit, but like, yeah, I would say for the most part, for us, I wouldn't say so much as self-work. It's like where we're going,
Yeah.
like what we're ambitious about, like what we're building,
Yeah.
we're towards that, and women being around. So it's like, there's a saying that's like, a woman can either tear you down or can build you up.
Right.
So we have to be very cautious about that, for the different women that come around us, because just as easily, like I would believe, like for women that certain guys come around, they're like, yo, like they're just playing like the long game. There's also women that are like that too.
Right.
That can
Be distracting.
yeah, like real easily, and are very good at it.
Yeah.
So like there's a lot of intentionality. Like we have to know how to discern according to that. Like we have to be very intentional about that.
Yeah.
So that is a conversation for us, and like we're always just curious because, like I was saying earlier, like there's a lot of women who are in the Christian space, men as well. But for us, it's like there's a lot of women who are in the Christian space that are just not godly women, And
Cosplaying.
yeah, and it's like we have to make sure like we're checking fruit.
Yeah,
So,
for sure. For sure. I think the same for me. It's like there's so many people or so many guys I see who are like, oh, like let's go to church together. And that's one thing about
That's always interesting.
Yeah, one thing about it is like I don't mind bringing people to church. Like I invite people to
Right.
church all the time because why wouldn't I want you to come to
Right.
church? But one thing that rubs me the wrong way is like the cosplaying, right? And also I actually enjoy my church and I look forward to
Right.
being at church.
I
And
do
that's
too.
like a good time for me. Like that's a safe space for me. So don't come in here trying to play games
Right.
and using that as like,
Yeah,
oh my gosh, that is a pet peeve for me. Like
Yeah.
don't use my safe space as a,
Yeah.
child, I can go on a 1 hour rant about that one. But
Right. No, for real.
But as we are wrapping up, is there anything else any other questions you have? Anything else you want anybody to know? Any last thoughts?
I'm always gonna preach. Well, not preach. This is something that was preached to me: is giving yourself grace. Like we're all just kids out here. Like we're all just students. We're all trying to just steward the things that were given to us based off of the things that we come from, trying to figure out our own identity, like all these different things. We don't know what we don't know. And the simple fact that we don't know what we don't know, we have to extend that same grace out to other people. But in order to do that, we have to extend it to ourselves first. Because like we've all wronged somebody in our life simply because we didn't know what we know now, or you don't know what you've yet to know. So just remember to give yourself some grace, and hopefully you're pursuing peace for yourself. Like extend that same grace out to other people, because we're all struggling out here. Like we're genuinely all struggling out here, and that's why it's so important to like speak life into the people that you're around. Like sitting here with KG, like speaking life into you, like whoever it may be, speak life into where they're going and not where they've been. We got to see past that to help people grow. So I would say that.
I like that. I think it just be kinder to people. Like you said, speak life into people, affirm your loved ones. And yeah, I mean, I don't have much more. You guys, I'm sorry. I just wanted to mention this. I'm sorry for not being so consistent. Y'all, it's been tough. I'm out here trying to wear all these hats.
Right.
I'm trying to produce. I'm trying to edit. I'm trying to find the guests. It's a lot. And y'all been pressing me for solo episodes, and I'll get to it. But thank you for coming and speaking with me. And I will see y'all next time on the Come Up with KG.
Yeah.